Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel. My name's FPL Phillips and this is your Game Week 13 episode of Eddie versus the Algorithm. Apologies to those of you who do like watching at the regular time at lunchtime on a Thursday. Just had some Wi-Fi issues this morning so I wasn't able to get the episode out quite in time. You'll have to forgive me, slightly delayed upload. Hopefully I can make up for it with some insightful content, as have got some important news today as well surrounding things in FPL, which we're going to be discussing in today's video. If you are a regular viewer tuning back in, then much appreciated that you are. If you're new to the channel, then this is the series here on the Fantasy Football Fix page where I am taking on the algorithm, the computer-generated team, all sorts of maths that goes into it. Every week of the season, we see who scores the most points in each game week. My free hit team up against the algorithm highest predicted point scoring side. So far, I'm doing pretty well. And before we get into having a look at game week 13, the algorithm team and my own side, let's have a bit of a recap as to how things went down in game week 12. And Game Week 12, if we cast our minds back, was not the best of showings from pretty much every FPL manager out there, really. 46 points it was, scored by the algorithm team, requiring some of those options from the bench to come in. Maguire coming in, Ben White missed out, Dunk. It really was just an absolute horror show. The only spark really being Mo Salah, who didn't even get the captain's armband in his algo side. Saka was the one who it ended up on, with Watkins up front being the only other return in the entire team. Ferguson up front, a bit of a disaster too. Overall, definitely a week to forget for a lot of managers, but definitely the algorithm team. So I didn't have too much of a difficult points total to beat. It was already 8-3 in the standings, and unsurprisingly, you can probably tell from the tone of my voice, it is now 9-3. I scored 74 points, which in the context of the game week, I don't think was too bad. No real defenders did very well last game week. I went with Livramento and Hall, which probably wasn't the wisest choice, but in the grand scheme of things, not many defenders did tremendously well. The double up on the Palace backline didn't work either, but I did make a few decent choices in the attack, albeit rather template ones. Salah, captaincy armband, 32 points. Haaland, another 16. Watkins and Bowen also chipping in with returns, and Saka's 5 points as well meant that it was a rather comfortable win over the algorithm. So very happy with that one. But we'll get into the juice of today's video. Game week 13 is not too far away now. There's some big news. The players coming back from the international break, press conferences, all that stuff. Let's have a discussion as we have a look at the algorithm team and how it's lining up for this game week. So it's going to be a 3-4-3. It's 56 predicted points for the algorithm side this game week, with the captain's armband going to a midfielder. A bit of a spoiler there as to who it might be. In goal, though, is where the vice-captain's armband is for some peculiar reason. It goes to Leno of Fulham, who is a keeper option, who I do think is a rather decent choice right now. And Wolves at home is a pretty good game for Fulham. He does really well, Leno, even in games where Fulham concede lots and lots of shots. In fact, that tends to be the ones where if he does end up getting over the line with his clean sheet, then he's come in with those double digits returns time after time in the past. There's been some great podcasts and analysis breaking down why Leno is a great pick. I can't really summarize or just repeat what other people have said because I don't feel that would be right. But overall, I can give you the consensus that Leno is a very decent keeping option. If you are looking for a goalkeeper switch right now, then he would definitely be very near, if not top of my list. The only problem really is that a lot of defensive options don't look great this week anyway. The fixtures aren't there, and I don't think really making a goalkeeper switch is the most sensible choice for our transfers at the moment. A lot of people have issues in their team surrounding the outfield players, where there is probably more upside to be gained using a transfer. Clean sheets have been pretty hard to come by in the grand scheme of things over the course of this season's campaign. But we'll move into having a look at the outfield defenders anyway. This is where the fixtures are looking a bit sketchy for the majority of teams. In this side, it's going to be Anderson, Trippier and Ream. So even facing Chelsea at home, Trippier does get into this side, which is interesting. Which is obviously not a very easy fixture on paper. Ream is an interesting one. Again, doubling up on that Fulham back line. One of the few decent fixtures this week, you'd have to say, for defences who haven't looked too shabby. And then Anderson is one that I do like. If you've got the money, you could consider going for him. But really, I think the sensible thing is maybe just to go for Mark Gay or maybe even Mitchell at Crystal Palace. But I'm definitely not against bringing in a Palace defender this week. I just think it is important that you look at your backline as a whole over the next foreseeable game weeks rather than just looking at, oh, my defenders are facing Chelsea and maybe I've got Simicast in against Man City this week. Maybe you've got some other defenders who don't have the kindest fixtures on paper and then panicking and maybe using a -4, maybe even a free transfer there when you could have used it better, maybe in your midfield or in your forward. But who am I to say? Obviously, anything can happen. Personally, that's the feel I'm getting, is that maybe not rushing into defensive mood just based on one fixture this week is the smartest thing to go about doing. In midfield, though, is where we will be looking at some transfers. I'm sure a lot of us. It's Son, Mbeumo, Saka and Martinelli who are the midfield four in the algorithm side, which is a bit of a surprise to me. Heung-min Son is one that I do like. Whether he'll make it into my team, we'll see in just a moment, but he is in my own personal side. Again, one that we did consider in yesterday's video for the captaincy, and whether the armband could go to him now that things aren't looking too great for Bowen. And Haaland, you never know, might be ruled out this weekend. Maybe the captaincy will end up falling to Son for a lot of us anyway. He does look like a good option, and Villa do concede goals. So I think there'll be something in that game for Spurs. They have got a lot of injuries at the moment, which is of course something to keep in mind. I think Brennan Johnson could also be a rather decent option in that Spurs team, but Heung-min Son is of course going to be the one, presumably on penalties, who is the option and talisman, the one playing through the middle. He's the one that I think a lot of people are going to be putting the armband on if it's not looking great for Erling Haaland this week. Mbeumo, Saka and Martinelli, again, Mbeumo looks good. His fixtures after this game week are the ones that are the strongest. It's Arsenal at home, obviously hard to back a team against them, but Brentford have got that track record, which we mentioned yesterday, of doing well in the past against the big six sides. Hitting Arsenal on the counter-attack could definitely be something that they look to do in this game. In fact, I would predict that that's the way that Brentford are going to come out and play. So although Arsenal have some very strong defensive data, and they'll most likely dominate the game, conceding fewer chances, you can never doubt Mbeumo, and you can never really rule him out and say that he's not going to get a return in this one. It's too much of a tough fixture because he has come through in the past in games where it's looked unlikely as well. So I kind of like the bravery of that call. And then Saka and Martinelli, so the players from the opposing side in that fixture. Saka, really like him. Martinelli, less so. I don't think he's looked that impressive to me. Wouldn't be going for him as an FPL option. I don't think Brentford is the easiest fixture in the world either, and there are probably other options I'd be looking at instead in my midfield. And then finally, up front, we've got Haaland, we've got Watkins, and we have Dom Solanke as well. Sheffield United away. Very nice fixture for that one. I think if you are looking at a forward option this week, Solanke will be one of the two that I would be edging towards. There is also the news coming out today that Awoniyi, Nottingham Forest, will be out for a few months, it looks like, with surgery happening on his groin. So bringing in Chris Wood, I think he's priced at 4.9 million, is something I've also been eyeing up, and it seems like a lot of people on Twitter have been doing as well. It's caused some pretty immature jokes if you've been over there, but yeah, Chris Wood looks like he could be a pretty decent option. Not on penalties for Nottingham Forest, that will be Gibbs White, so don't get confused there, but Chris Wood could definitely be a great enabler, especially going into this kind of Christmassy period where there is a lot of team rotation generally, and we do often need players from our bench. So having a nice front eight, and when you're only spending 0.4 million more than the actual base price or lowest price a striker can be, that tends to be where there's a lot of value, and you can use those other funds, of course, to upgrade to, have Haaland, have Salah, have Son, all these players you want in the rest of your attack. Finally then, on the bench, we'll just take a look. It's Gordon, Gahey and Bulldog. Gordon is another one I do like for this game week. Newcastle have that fantastic home record, so he makes it onto the bench. Mark Gahey, so another Crystal Palace defensive option, and then Bulldog for the cheap one. But we'll move into having a look at how my team compares to this one. 56 predicted points it was for the algorithm. My total, my predicted points, is 48, so I'm pretty happy with that. Let's have a look and a quick reveal of my team. I've still stuck with Leno in goal, but I have changed the defence around a little bit. I have brought in a West Ham defensive option. I've gone with the former Vladimir Soufal alongside Gahey, who I've got starting in my 11, and also Anderson, who is still there. In midfield, now admittedly, this was made before I did see the news today, so I'm going to have to rely presumably on a player from my bench already, given that Bowen is probably going to be out for this game. would have probably switched it across to an Mboma or maybe even Karumadoma now that he's back in training, it seems. Probably wouldn't take the risk and would probably go for Mbomo. So maybe that would up my predicted points slightly, given that Bowen's down on 2.2. Maybe I would switch over to having him in my side. But we have someone on the bench anyway who we'll get onto in just a moment. Salah and Saka are in my side. I'm just backing Salah in basically any week at the moment. Obviously, Man City away is debatably the toughest fixture any team can have. But I trust Salah in the big game still, and I think that he could easily get something in this fixture. And then finally, I've gone with Eze, who I really like over the next couple of game weeks. I don't think he's getting enough credit. I think that he could be a really nice option to go for if you do own a Jarrod Bowen and you're looking for a replacement, such as myself. This is the one I'm eyeing up. So Eze, I already own him, admittedly, but Eze looks a standout pick to me. Luton away is a very nice fixture. We saw how good he was in just his first game back. So yeah, very happy to have him in my side for this game week. And slightly surprised the algorithm didn't, but maybe that's just due to him not being back long enough to build up some decent data into that computer-generated team. And then finally, up front, Haaland's got the captain's armband. Eze now has the vice, just in case. I could have had it on Bowen before, but I didn't want two flag players, and that's come to be a pretty sensible decision. So if Haaland does miss out, I have got a fallback option. I have also got Watkins, and I've also got Solanke in my side. So looking very similar to the algorithm team. I did make this before the algorithm team was pulled, so quite happy that it's looking relatively decent, or maybe given the track record of the computer so far this season, I shouldn't be so happy. But the bench anyway will have a different player on it to the algorithm side that is coming in for Bowen, and that's going to be Cole Palmer, who, again, Newcastle away, very tough fixture this week, seems to be the theme of game week 13. I'm happy to have him in here. I still think his data looks really good, despite a lot of it coming from penalties in terms of his XG. We've then also got Maguire, and we've also got Strakosha and Baldock as well, just cheap options I could throw in there. But yeah, that's going to wrap up Eddie versus the algorithm for this week. Those are the two teams. Let me know down below in the comments, as always, who do you think is going to come out on top and who do you think will win? Will I be able to reach double figures for the season so far, making it 10 wins to the algorithm's 3? Or will the algorithm be able to pull it back to only a 5-point gap by the end of this game week? Having a bit of a smile there, obviously. I'm pretty pleased with how I'm doing so far. But yeah, thank you very much for tuning in, everyone. I hope you have a good game week 13. I know the fixtures on paper aren't looking great, which I've probably said about 15 times in this video. But yeah, I wish you all merry green arrows. And yeah, hopefully you have a happy Thanksgiving, all that good stuff. And I'll catch you in the next one. Goodbye.